Hey, want a Trito?
I hope that you all realize that my whole life is turned into this.
Trito.
This is now my
Come.
new normal.
Come, get a Trito. Come on. I know, there's so much to explore.
We dragged her out of the car and we got her in here on time.
Go.
But we forgot the dog leash.
Okay.
That's why there is no leash. And then we have Voyager up there too. Anyway, so Karen's a 2005 graduate. That makes her extremely odd. And she's going to talk to you guys today about beer. But first, does anybody have any announcements? I forgot that part.
The withdraw deadline is coming up. If you feel like you need to withdraw for courses, so next Friday.
This is very true, and yeah. And then advising is coming up soon too. It's gonna be great. Yes.
Phone-a-thon. So students, in case you're looking to earn some extra cash, I think there's like 20 to 30 hours worth of stuff you can do if you're interested. Phone-a-thon, they get paid $15 an hour.
To talk on the phone?
To make calls on pre-printed phone numbers.
Yeah, but do you get fudge-covered Oreos? Because that's what I got when I phone-a-thoned. Oh, yeah.
It is coming up. If you're interested in doing that, there are flyers all throughout Stratton on the poster board. So take a look. There's a QR code you can scan to be able to register for it. So think about it. $15 an hour. Not too bad.
Put the chair there.
Want to put a chair here? Do you think maybe that'll help?
Yeah, come.
I'm trapped!
Cheers.
Oh, wait. It's not me. I know, I'm here forever now.
I don't trapped him.
I now live here. All right, Karen, are you ready?
Sure.
All right, Miss Karen.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. This is really fun. I remember being in those seats and watching other folks give Science Colloquium Fridays, so thank you for spending your time with me. It's really makes me feel good that someone actually wants to hear from an alum up here today, so it's great. Thank you for also not eating your jelly bean yet. Where is that one? There we go. Road Less Traveled is the slogan for Two Roads Brewing Company. You could take that road or you could take that road. Named after the Robert Frost poem. That's where I happen to be employed currently. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that's like for a job and how I got there. We'll talk a little bit about the U.S. craft beer history, the boom, the pending, not necessarily bust, but downfall that's happening right now. Why we care about quality assurance and what we do in craft beer quality assurance. I call them glows and grows for pros, cons, goods, bads. Learn a little bit about what it's like to have this type of job. How did I get there? That's what Jackie was asking. What the future for the industry is like, sub-acknowledgements and your jelly bean sensory activity. Plus, up here, we probably won't have time in the middle of it, but at the end, if anyone wants, I'll rush through just so I make sure we do have time. I also have hop and malt samples. I have 2 varieties of malts and 2 varieties of hops. It'll teach you how to properly sensorize each one if you'd like. And we can do some malt chews and hop pellet rubs. So fun stuff going there. So the rise of craft beer and beverage industry is our first topic. Brewers Association is a government liaison organization that puts out a lot of data about what the craft beer market is like, what sales are like, what volume is like, so that folks can make educated predictions about how to run their business. So the chart on the left is 2008 to 2015. It's basically showing you the boom in breweries. I'm sorry it's kind of an eye chart, but the y-axis starts from 0 breweries in planning, which you have to register in order to be a brewery in planning before you can actually be one of service. Starts at 0, goes up to 2,400. So you can see over that time, we started about 200, and we're up to 2,000 just from 2008 to 2015. By the time 2016 came around, there were 4,000 breweries in the country. So it was literally growing exponentially. 75% of all drinking age adults lived within 10 miles of a local brewery by that time. And then craft beer today, this goes as far as 2022 because the Brewers Association has not finished crunching the 2023 numbers yet. But you can see here from 1994, I think, is this a...
Yeah, the one in the middle, I was playing with the other day.
Aha! 1994 all the way to 2022. This is a stacked chart of all of them. The bottom line is really, really hard to see, but these are what's called brew pubs, and that is basically your small neighborhood you can kind of roll up. They're not doing major production for distribution, but they're around, and you can see how that growth curve happened. These ones in the middle are just tap rooms. So tap rooms are also trying to, they're a little bit smaller than even the brew pubs. Microbreweries don't even really show up because they're micro and they're mixed in with the tap rooms over there. The regional size breweries, which is the one that I work for, is this blue line on the bottom. So they basically start, there's a little bit of an uptake as the breweries grow through these stages. But once you're stable, you're kind of in, and there's not a lot of growth and change there. So just some numbers that talk a little bit more about it. This is the dollar share of all the types of alcohols that are considered in the beer category. So we've got craft beer here, and that's defined by someone that's not a global conglomerate, basically. So your local neighborhood craft beer place. The rest of them are domestic super premium, so the high end, you got your expensive fancy ones up here. You got your imports, so this is like Dos Equis, Corona, Stella. Domestic premiums, those are your Budweiser, your Miller, your Coors. Below premium are all your light versions of those, Blue Light, Natty Light, Busch Light. There's other categories too, fermented malt beverages, hard seltzers. Long story short, craft is just this very tiny wedge here. So all the other things that start there, we have hard seltzer coming through. We've got fermented malt beverages, so they have a little bit of everything. They have a beer base in them. It has to be of a certain percent. They've got fermented sugar like a hard seltzer. They might have alcohol added in as a neutral grain spirit or flavor stabilizer. We've got spirits themselves, we've got ready-to-drink cocktails, we've got wine, we've got non-alcoholic beer, we've got hop water, no alcohol, just hops and flavors in water. And then most recently, alternative beverages that include things like THC or Delta-9. So it's not just craft beer anymore. This is what the beverage market is like, especially if you're in the regional or above brewery size. So there's a lot of different types of beverages to consider. Why do we care about QA? Well, first things first, I want to tell you a little bit about the difference between quality control and quality assurance. Quality control involves setting targets, standards, measuring to performance, tracking deviations, and taking action when it's out of control. The word is literally in there. So on the bottom here, I have what's called a CV chart. And you run a standard every day. This is the yellow lines that are dotted are one standard deviation out, and the orange lines that are dotted are two standard deviations out from where you expect your result to be. And every day you enter the result of that control. When it goes out of spec, you need a corrective action to say, hey, something's not right here. I might not be able to trust the data from this particular experiment. All right, let me make an adjustment. You get them back in control. That's an example of something that happens in quality control. Quality assurance, on the other hand, contains quality control measures. It's more about building a program to mitigate risk overall. A lot of continuous improvement happens in here. Plan, do, check, act. So you make a plan, you execute that plan, you check and see, did it work? And then what do we do next to continue the cycle of that plan? So quality control sits inside quality assurance, and both of them are part of a system. Make sense so far? Lots of just word vomit on this slide here, but QA ensures safety. We're looking to make sure that the only microbes that are in that beer are the ale yeasts that we want to do the fermenting. We don't want anything in there that'll spoil the beer. We want consistent customer experience. So especially if you're a larger size brewery, you're putting that beer out in the world. Anytime someone buys it from this store in this state or from this tap in this state, if it's the same brand, you want that to taste the same no matter where you get it. And it's also important for non-alcohol beers because they can harbor human pathogens. If your liquid or your beer has alcohol in it, also has hops in it, and it also has an environment where pH is generally low, temperature is usually stored pretty cold, and those things are antimicrobial by nature. But once you have a non-alcoholic product, it's susceptible to spoilers that don't have any of those inhibition barriers left over in them. So a little bit about the brewing process for those of you who aren't as familiar with it. We're going to focus here and talk about some of the raw materials that go in. I have 2 of the 4 samples that we'll talk about here. So we mill the grains or the malt, different malt samples, we grind them up, put them in a mash tun with water. It stays hot and it pulls all the sugars out. And then it goes through a lauter tun where you run all that water off through to collect the liquid sugar, basically that you're straining off the malt. And then we put it in a kettle and boil it. So malt is one of the raw materials. Usually it's barley. It's germinated just so the seeds start to change a little bit. You learn about all of that in Jackie's classes. And it fixes the right type of sugars that you want to have in that liquid that's now called wort. And this is where you add the water. And you're running that through to collect all of those sugars in your brew kettle. One of the 2 places that you can add hops is here on this, what we call the hot side, in that whirlpool section while it's hot and after it's boiled. That's where the antimicrobial properties can start to be imparted into the liquid. And this is where you get the bittering effect. If you add hops on this side, you're going to isomerize alpha acids in the hops, and it just changes that molecular structure enough so that your taste buds will pick up the fact that it's now bitter. The next section of the brewing process for the other important raw material ingredients is happening here in the fermentation tank. It's, again, yeast and hops. For the yeast that you add, the strain determines the style. You need to closely monitor the temperature, make sure it has the right nutrients in order for it to do its job. And you can also harvest the yeast out of that particular fermenter and beer at a particular time, store it cool, make sure it's healthy, and pitch it back into another fermenter another time. So you can cycle that through, depending on your yeast strain, a certain number of times. And that saves time and effort for propagating it up from a single cell to begin with. And then this is the second place you can add hops. Again, natural antimicrobial properties, but this is where you have aroma contributions. This is a cold side addition. It's called a dry hop. And if you add hops over here, this is where you get those aromas like fruit, stone fruit, pine, spice, sometimes a little bit floral in the background. So we'll experience some of that later if you guys want to check out some hops. There we go. So what do we do in craft beer quality assurance? 4 main areas we're going to talk about here. Microbiology, first and foremost, managing the yeast and managing any other microbes that might be in there and wreck your entire batch of beer. We plate them on, I think we have 4 or 5 different media right now. We also do PCR at certain points in the fermentation process. That is our lab supervisor, Mike. I just bought that new laminar flow hood, and I asked him how he liked it, and he was like, it's pretty good, but the pipettes don't really sit on the rack too much. And I said, get excited, I'm gonna take a picture. So that's what we got out of there. Chemistry, second area of our main focus for QA. Does the product meet target parameters? So Again, lots of charts, lots of graphs. This is a word salad of all of the parameters that we measure in chemistry for craft beer. Packaging, will the package maintain its integrity, and will the beer have good shelf life? So we have several different packages that we currently package into at Two Roads, and we'll measure the seams on the cans. We'll measure oxygen, a total package oxygen in there is the enemy of a shelf life stable beer. And sensory, the most fun one. What does the product look, smell, and taste like, and is it true to the standard targets that you've set? So yes, I really do get to sit around and drink beer for my job. It's pretty cool.
See, you're my hero.
So time for sensory activity, by the way. Jelly beans, I hope you still have them. You could have eaten one, but I'm going to grab this one right here so I can do this alongside you.
I want to do it too.
Here's what you want to do. This is an exercise in understanding the difference between aroma and taste. Taste, you've got sweet, salty, sour, bitter, umami. There's some other research out there right now that's talking about fat and how that affects flavor. But the aroma is what's going to give you the actual flavor of what it is. So you may have done this before. If you haven't, pick a jelly bean, plug your nose, plop it in your mouth, chew for the count of 4 or 5, and then unplug your nose. And you should notice when you first start chewing, it's just sweet. When you unplug your nose, you will understand what flavor it actually is. So we do both of those things in sensory when we are evaluating beers. How bitter is it? How sweet is it? Are there any other umami or background flavors depending on the style? And then the retronasal, when you allow that air to pass back through your sinuses, then what your nose is picking up is going to inform what your tongue is picking up, and then that tells you about sensory flavor. So a little fun activity there. Other areas that QA focuses on, huge list here. I don't want to go through any of them, but if anyone wants to ask me about them at the end, basically we wear a lot of hats. QA touches every single aspect of production and distribution and feedback and sales and marketing and storage and everything that you can do. So what do I do, and specifically for craft beer QA? These are the goals that I have for this year. We're building a food safety program from scratch. We are attempting to large scale produce some non-alcoholic beer, and because it doesn't have alcohol, it is regulated as a food because it could potentially carry pathogens. So we have to build a program to support the production of that particular liquid. Budget tracking, this year I have to tack on labor cost analysis per barrels of beer brewed. That's our unit of measure for that. New product development, I have to do a feasibility study on 2 different types of liquids. So one of them is we want to put this one in a very unique package. Will it work? Will it stay safe? Will it stay, keep its integrity over shelf life and distribution, and for how long? And the other one is we're going to make a brand new liquid that only a handful of other people are making, and can we do it, and what's involved in it, and can I talk my brewery out of it, basically, by doing all of this research. I'm cross-training my team to kind of build out my bench. One of our kind of morbid but favorite sayings is, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, you have to know how to handle this. And it also helps build your team culture, gives people buy-in, gives them a path to learning more and growing professionally in your department. So everyone has their main job that they do and at least one other specialty area where they can help back up one another. And I have to drive action on interdepartmental initiatives. So for example, quality is in charge of walking through an area in the warehouse and doing an audit about what's clean and what's dirty and what's safe and what's unsafe. And then we give that list to them after it's scored. But a lot of times they're just too busy and they don't pick up on actually handling those types of things. So now I have to create okay, we're going to focus on top 3, or we're going to find your most high scoring safety thing and we're going to work on that this week, and how do we get you to take action on bringing those scores down. So that's the type of projects that we're in on right now. Every week we publish KPIs, or key productivity indicators. This is an example of my slide from last week. I wish it was all green circles, but this is an honest slide. There is some yellow, and once in a great while I have a red. Report on all of those areas: microbiology, chemistry, if we have any product quality holds, sensory. All the packaging data we collect, we actually just feed to the packaging department, and they report on that. We collect the data for them, but that's their job there. And then we also highlight risks and opportunities. So what's a risk that, okay, it's repeat, I've already talked about this 3 or 4 times. Let's see, guys, I need your help, get some action on it. And then what are we working on that we're proud of this week, and we've made some ground. For goal evaluation, they must be in SMART format. Have you guys ever talked about SMART goals? You know what? See some head nods back there. It's really helpful not only for myself, but for my staff to understand if I give them a big project, well, how do they chunk it out? How do they know how to handle it? What's a benchmark to know that they actually are making progress? Can you get to this in 2 weeks? Can you get to this in 2 months? Or if there's a hang up, then I know that that's something I can help address. My boss assigns me that list of goals that I just showed you. He's the VP of operations. We have weekly check-ins with my boss. I have bi-weekly check-ins with my managers, and about every 4 to 6 weeks with my hourly staff. Those KPI reports that we mentioned, and then we do yearly performance reviews, so they're merit-based. Did you meet the goals that you set that were important for both your professional development and the growth of the business, or making a process more efficient, or maybe doing something entirely new that we haven't done yet? And then, so I just have 2 direct reports right now, and then one of my managers has everyone else underneath him. So he has to do 6, so I'll sit down with him and help him do those. And I have an org chart coming up, so you'll be able to see what that looks like there. So, a quality assurance job in craft beer. What is it like? Pros and cons, goods and bads. I call them glows and grows. So what's challenging? These are places where we still need to grow as an industry. The pace of work is blistering and exhausting. I'm not going to lie about it, but I like to win. So when it goes really fast and I can chalk up some wins over the course of the day, it makes me pretty happy. Sometimes I have up to 6 meetings a day. I have 100 emails a day. Murphy's Law is pretty much the law of how things run in a production facility, especially when you're operating at that fast of a pace. And there's seasonal ebbs and flows. So in the summertime, when teachers are off and everyone else is out having fun in the world and going on vacations, we're in our busy production season. So shoulder season is when we get a little bit of a slowdown, and that's when we get to kind of breathe, reset, bond again as a team or a leadership group, and then get fresh to start again. Safety is paramount. Craft brewing is hot, loud, wet, and dangerous pretty much all the time. So there's always things to work on in safety, and we actually encourage something called near-miss reporting. So even if something didn't actually physically happen to someone or something and cause direct harm, if it had the potential to do so and you were in the area and experienced that, we encourage people to submit it as a near miss so then we can address it and make sure it doesn't actually happen at some point. There's a lot of work to do in DEI initiatives in craft beer. It's, as you saw, on the tail end, very old, but also a very new industry, but it has very old leadership. So this is, the plane that I'm on is kind of the next generation of craft beer folks moving up. There's a lot of severely underrepresented groups in that particular field, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later when we see some of the organizations that are trying to do some good work there. And just like many other industries, the wages haven't caught up with the need for experience. When this boom happened, everyone jumped in because they could, because there were openings. And it used to be that you were in this job solely for the love of craft beer. And as the industry is kind of leveling out a little bit, you get more turnover and attrition in your positions because I could go do what I do at the mayonnaise plant and make way more money. But do I want to do sensory on mayonnaise every day? Not quite the same. The jobs require a lot of training, even with prior education and experience, because it's a very, very niche field. And again, the high turnover without going back and building some of that foundational support and culture into your departments and your teams. But what's awesome, see, this list is a lot longer. Beer perks. So for example, Two Roads is, my particular brewery is very generous with their beer perks. I get 40 pints a month between our 2 tap rooms. So it's really neat to be able to just like finish your job and walk upstairs and have a beer. Not very many places you can do that. Every other week with your paycheck, you get a case of beer. So you can sign up for, they'll have 3 or 4 different varieties at the time, and then you just walk out, pick it up off a pallet, get your direct deposit. It's a Good Friday. We get merch credits in the store. So if you want like a piece of clothing or some swag or something for yourself or anybody, it's on the house. And yes, again, literally drinking on the job or sensory, it's pretty fun. There's a list of professional organizations that are lovely resources at all different levels that I'll talk a little bit about them at the end again. Travel, my ultimate all-time favorite thing about my job is every year in September when the hops are harvested from the Yakima Valley in Washington State, flying out there and literally picking through each variety lots on the table and saying, oh, there's 3 different Centennial lots here and I need 8,600 pounds of them. I want this lot because this is the one that's going to make the beer that I brew taste like the beer I want it to be. And I do that by rubbing hops, and then the hop vendors take you out to dinner, and then you tour a farm and you tour a field and you drink beer, and it's absolutely the ultimate best. Fast pace, again, it's blistering, it's exhausting sometimes, but it forces you to be efficient. So you don't have a meeting to plan how you're going to have a meeting about planning how you're going to do one step and then communicate it. You just have to do the things. So are swears good in here still?
I think so, yeah.
The one that I blurted out up there is something we end up saying every couple months or so, which is, fuck it, we'll do it live. We don't have a plan. We're just going to roll it out and try it and take notes. And it's a really unique place to be okay with learning, using it as a learning opportunity. It's the first place I've ever worked where this has been really accepted as a method to just understand what's happening around you. The fear of failure is literally being cut out with the new great leadership that I have and I get to be a part of at Two Roads. Send it is my favorite saying. So if someone's asking me, I don't really know about this batch, it had this thing wrong, but then we tested it and then this came out okay, and then those people said it's fine, I just say, send it. I trust you. I believe in what you're trying to do the work to show me that what you want to do. You want to send it, we'll send it. We'll get it out the door. Or shut it down. That happens a lot too. I have the guy, Mike, in the picture earlier. One of his like top QA like fantasies is something is wrong on the floor and you just like the slow motion run down the stairs, shut it down to make it stop before it gets any worse while it's down there. Your innovation also happens at light speed when everything is fast paced. So how do we do it faster, better, cleaner, in a way that's more efficient and still meet your targets for production? And the culture of the industry. We use a lot of tools that are pretty high level corporate, but you can adapt them and change them and make them fit your organization. Jeans and flannels is how you can dress every day when you go to craft beer. And if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right, because after all, you're just making beer and getting a paycheck. So how did I end up there from here? I made this really complicated chart with lots of animations. I say I was on the buy 4 degrees, get 1 free plan because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I screwed around a lot at a community college in Niagara County, out of high school and in and out of a job. My first job ever was for a chemical distributor where I drove a forklift and loaded 53-foot trailers full of very toxic chemicals and worked outside in all seasons. Come full circle, I just got my forklift recertification like 20 years later at the brewery because that's a pretty big thing to do too. Came to Wells in there as a Will student. Are those still a thing? Do we have any? We don't have any Will students there? Non-trad age. I started when I was 25 and I was dorming with all of the folks who were like 17, 18, which was a really unique experience. But I didn't have a job. I quit everything in my life. I came here for an open house in November of 2002. And as soon as I stepped foot out of my car into McMillan and then sat in the AER and then had to go to Zabriskie to sit with Dr. Bailey, I said, yeah, I'm never leaving this place, basically. So that was it for me. And while I was here, Dr. Bailey took us to NCUR. And that would have been in 2005 in the spring because I only had 2 years here. So all of my best friends were the other transfer students who were also here for only 2 or 3 years. And after 2004 summer, which was in between my 2 years that I was here, I had a NSF program that I was accepted into at Youngstown State University in Ohio. And then I came back and made a poster for that Dr. Bailey took us to. That year it was at Washington and Lee University in Virginia for NCUR. So lots of little dabbles in all the different types. I was here taking bio classes with Jackie and ecology with Dr. Vaughter. Took biochem, took a little bit of everything, aquatic bio. We were out doing kick and picks in the creeks. But then I went to grad school and I was doing molecular biology, mycology, medical mycology, biochemistry, and I had a thesis about a strain of penicillin from Southeast Asia that was dimorphic. So it would grow as a mold in normal environment. And then when those single cells reached human body temperature, their proteins would allow them to switch and grow as a single-celled yeast and take over organ systems in immunocompromised people. So touch base on all of that. I went back into straight old wet chem at a public health lab until this star happened. In 2014, I took a trip to Napa Valley, and I said, I can do all of this benchtop chemistry, and I love wine. I love red wine so much. Had an experience here in the Finger Lakes when I was living right in it, going to Wells. Kept that love through bartending and volunteering in planning wine fundraisers for charity organizations. So I was always involved in both alcohol and the science behind liquid and wet bench chemistry. And so when I was in Napa, I said, how do I do this for wine? And then I happened to realize that you could also do it for beer, and that was the position that was open at Southern Tier Brewing. So that's where I started out. That's why STBC was there before I made the jump in 2020 over to Two Roads. So the future of work in craft beer and beverages. Again, we saw that there were so many other beverages out there. It's not just craft beer anymore. We're looking at package innovation, the volume packages. It used to be everything was in long neck or short neck glass, amber, brown bottles, sometimes green bottles if you got some from Germany. Now we're doing 19.2 ounce cans of double and triple IPAs for sale in a convenience store. So there's lots of innovations, lots of things that change about the volume and the types of packages. Pushing the boundaries of flavor and things that are added in, the location and the type of sale, and the equipment and the tools keep getting cleaner and faster. You used to have to plate something and wait 3 to 5 to 7 days to see if those microbes would grow on a media plate. And now you can prep it in 35 minutes and an hour later get a PCR result from a DNA hit on whether or not you have a certain organism in your sample. So participants in this industry will need skills like thinking outside the box. It's such a cliche term now, but the liberal arts education that you're giving yourself by this opportunity here at Wells is unparalleled in giving you understanding complex processes, communicating across diverse audiences, and looking at big pictures. So I work alongside people who are just engineers or just in marketing or just in chemistry in their life, or even English lit majors. Brewing has a little bit of everybody. But if you don't have the ability to step outside of everything you know and look at something from someone else's perspective, it's going to make it a lot harder to be able to be collaborative and solve problems. So the organizations that I kept alluding to, the first one is one of my favorite science nerd clubs ever. There's literally a place called the American Society of Brewing Chemists. I am about to accept a board seat as a chair of the publications committee, so working together with actual textbook publishers about what do we need to make a text about to help inform and educate the next generation of craft beer folks, and who do we tap to make that book, and how can we support them through the process. Currently, for the last 6 of my 9 years, I have been, Kimmel.
She had enough of me.
I know, she hates it. I've been on the Electronic Communications Committee, which is our monthly newsletter, and asking people to do feature articles. So I'm taking a jump from a 750-word article ask, literally, to, hey, will you write a book about this? So that's going to be a fun thing to do. The Master Brewers Association of the Americas is the oldest and largest organization dedicated to beer. It also is worldwide. We just happen to be in the one for North and South America in this chapter here. They're doing a lot of work in brewery safety. They do a lot of very technical brewing information. And they're doing a lot of work. I sit on the committee for DEI there too, so I can learn about those initiatives. The Pink Boots Society is super fun.
Oh boy.
Because that is for anyone who identifies as female and makes their money in an industry tied to alcohol. Doesn't have to be beer, doesn't have to be in production. You could be an accountant, you could be in marketing, you could be anything, but either one of those. And they assist, inspire, and educate folks. So a lot of what they do is raise money for scholarship programs so that folks can get certificates and learn more about their area of expertise. Brewers Association, I mentioned them earlier, all of the data and the lobby organization, and then each state has a Brewers Guild that also advocates on your behalf at the government level. So with that, here's all the folks I need to thank. That's my org chart for my QA team. Those folks are holding down the fort right now for me today so that I could be here with you all. This fancy dog. And the guy up here holding this dog is also my husband, who is also in the craft beer industry. He works for the oldest and largest hop vendor in the world called John I. Haas. Their international headquarters is Germany, but I actually fly out and select hops from him in the fall when I go to Yakima, which is kind of fun. And so we met, and we're keeping it in the industry. We met at a beer conference about sensory in 2017 in Florida with the ASBC Science Nerds. So that's what I have.
All right.
Thanks for taking the round last ride with me.
Questions? Like, how can you also just drink beer all day?
Also, you'll notice here there's a intern co-op. Just want to throw that out there in case we got any Connecticutians here or anyone who'd like to spend their time.
That's awesome.
I know that's a requirement for some
Yeah,
programs
it's still
here
2 now they have to have.
So come on out. We'll
Yeah.
take you.
Any questions?
If someone wanted to get into this and wasn't the legal age of 21, how would one do so?
It's okay. You just don't drink it. You can do everything else. We've had several folks that we hire in brewing, in packaging, even in QA. interns and early hires who aren't 21, just don't drink it. That's the only rule. You can touch it, you can move it, you can hook up a hose.
Yeah, it is, yeah, it is the
I
most
mean,
fun.
like doing the most boring part of it.
Yeah.
So the sensory that we do, I'm trained on about 20 different flavors and aromas for different styles and problems that you might find in different parts of the brewing process. And you can dose those in anything. You don't actually have to dose it into beer. And a lot of them are in a lot of the foods that you eat every day, and you just haven't learned that they're also in beer and at what level. So if you want to do sensory on that, you still could too.
But you're gonna be a bottom.
So I'm wondering, in the 2010s, there was a kind of a shift in beer itself. You used to have really clear beer, was really what people wanted. Beer that was more turbid, people stayed away from. Now it seems like all the craft beers are turbid, and that seems to be the direction.
Yes.
Why did that shift happen?
That's a great
You know?
question. So I think it's part of the evolution of where the industry was going anyway. So even earlier than that, in the late 80s, early to mid 90s, when your Sierra Nevadas and your Boston beers and those really big leaders were starting to crop up, everyone was sick of the yellow fizzy water beer. So it's the macro lagers, we'll call them. They're made with rice and corn adjuncts very often, and they're made at what we call a high gravity. So they start with a lot of grain and a lot of sugars. They finish with more alcohol than the 4.5% or 5% that they're advertised, and they're watered down. And you didn't have a huge variety outside of that. So the first round of craft beer revolution, so to speak, was those early 90s breweries with how much alcohol and hops can we put in here, and how far can we push it, the total opposite of the macro selection that we have. And then the second round was, all right, what do we do next? That's where your bittering hops started falling to the wayside. They might use some, but no one wanted a 90 or 120 IBU, 8% dark amber beer anymore. They wanted something different. So then you start, the hop varieties that gave a fruity aroma started popping up. And actually the owners of Alchemist Brewing in Vermont, their beer Heady Topper, was one of the first ones that ended up being a New England style hazy IPA. People went crazy for it because at the time there was literally a black market for trading beers across the country, because you have to be registered to distribute your alcohol in certain states because it's regulated by the TTB because it's alcohol. And so if someone in California couldn't get a Heady Topper, they'd ship them out some Pliny the Elder so that the Vermont people would ship them out some Heady Topper and trade it off. And it was very unique, and it was a prize beer, so then other folks started trying to make those style of beers. And then you have your tea trilogy, you have your Tired Hands, Treehouse, and Trillium in New England and Philadelphia area, who were also figured out early on how to make those beers and those styles. And then what we found is that the turnover is just faster now. Lagers are coming back, and they're coming back from a craft view, though, instead of the macro kind of watered down adjunct lagers. And in the industry, it's a fail fast type of throughput on the products that you offer to the market, because you're trying to keep up with what the consumer demand is, but also what can you put out there. And if it doesn't get traction, just allow it to fail fast and try the next best thing. Does that answer your question a little bit? Okay. You never know. You never know. I can't wait till porters come back around, because I really like those.
Me too.
And they're all falling by the wayside. You can find one off here and there in some different tap rooms, but Saisons are making the comeback next again. So it's a completely different European, Belgian, and French, typically ale strains. They ferment at either really high or mid-range temperatures, and they give a really fruity, spicy characteristic, and they're typically lower ABV. So we retired a Saison at Two Roads just like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and all of a sudden we're bringing it back because we've got the recipe, we made it.
Family members of
And now people, yeah. Jackie's brother called me and said, "Could you please make this beer?" And I was like, okay,
I love it.
I'll make that one again. So, yeah.
So how much capacity do you have at the brewery to do all these different styles, right? If you're lagering, that's a different set of temperatures at time than if you're doing one of the macro lagers, if you're worried about diacetyl rest for this style or not. Like, is there just like a lot of equipment that has to be held on to? Are you able to move as fast as you want to?
The answer is no, we're not able to move as fast as we want to. It's, we have an entire team dedicated just to planning because everything has to happen in a stepwise fashion, just like it does in the brew house, where it goes from one stage to the next to the next. In a larger brew house, in a production brewery the size of ours or bigger, you can have the beer in the mash tun and move it to the lauter, and when it's on its way out of the lauter into the kettle or whirlpool, you can start another mash. So they're stagger started into one another, and you would 2 or 3 or 4 turns, 100 barrels at a time, to fill up a larger fermenter. And then you also kind of stagger your fermenters like that for what size you need depending on what volume you're brewing. And then from there they go into a tank called a bright tank, which holds, if you're not making a hazy IPA, clean and clear filtered bright beer ready to go in a package. And so then you need to make sure the 300 barrel bright tank is clean because you've got another one coming down the pipe. And it's a lot of puzzle pieces, plug and play, contingency plans to try to get it all to fit. That's a lot of the chaos. Planning will change something last minute when packaging thought they were going to do that and warehouse brought up those materials, but then no, we turned the wheel, took a hard left, and we got to figure it out.
Sounds like fun, really.
Yeah. Come.
All right, you guys good? All right, if you want to come and check out these things, Karen's here for you to do sensory stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Professor Bailey, you should come and say. Thank you. Yeah, well, I can make it.